So, Angelo, I look at the stock, and obviously it's pulled back, but it also had a huge day yesterday. So should we read a lot into the price moves at this point?
Probably not. I mean, we kind of look at the move today. I mean, typically what you do get when it comes to Apple is kind of a running into the event like you saw yesterday. And then you kind of get to sell the news, which is what you saw, you've seen today. So I wouldn't look too deep into the actual performance of the stock here in recent weeks and, today as well.
All right, so what did we learn today? Phones, good, cool, new, expected versus unexpected. What's the takeaway, Angelo? I got to be honest, I'm not an Apple guy. Sometimes it's hard for me to keep track. So for those that aren't itching to buy the latest, newest thing, tell us what Apple is trying to convince us to buy. What are they saying we need next?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the actual product is concerned, I mean, they announced 4 new iPhones, starting with the iPhone mini at $699. So that's essentially the same price as what you saw with the last year's phones. And, at a smaller form factor, and it kind of, rolls all the way up to the iPhone Pro Max, keeping the prices of the phone the same at the higher end of things. That being said, you're getting 5G, which everyone knew was coming, as well as the OLED screens, and you're getting that now across all 4 devices. So you're getting the OLED now at the lower priced phones, which is not something you were getting previously. And then at the end of the day, I mean, I think Apple kind of punched in a lot of great kind of camera functionality, as they always do with their next generation devices. Across the board here, clearly with some greater emphasis on the higher priced devices. And then, of course, they announced the A14 Bionic processor, which is, again, it'll just make these devices a lot more faster and better. At the end of the day, I mean, I think what's key here is, one, the price point. The fact that they kept it, starting at $699, I think is extremely critical, given that we're in the midst of this pandemic, and a lot of kind of consumers out there are cash strapped. So price point I think is great, and from when you can get your hands on these things, pretty much before the end of the month, which again, as far as kind of the consensus estimates are concerned out there, aligns pretty well with where we expected.
Angelo, right now, what's going to be a greater force over the next 3 to 6 months on these sales? Is it going to be the tech and the new additions to the actual hardware, or is it going to be whether or not people have money in their pocket? Because it doesn't look like we're getting any more checks anytime soon, and that's just based off what I read.
Yeah, it's interesting, because if you kind of look at the most recent June quarter that they had, pretty phenomenal, the numbers that they posted, just in the iPhone side of things. I mean, they absolutely annihilated the numbers in the June quarter on the iPhone side of things. In fact, they actually sold more units in that June quarter than they had done a year earlier. Clearly, some of that had to do with the fact that they did roll out a newer, lower price phone, which definitely had to kind of get pushed out there, at the retail outlets and what have you. But at the end of the day, I mean, there were a number of stores that were closed for a good chunk of that June quarter, and they did absolutely phenomenal, which kind of gives you an indication of how well that iPhone 11 cycle could have been if we didn't have that pandemic. Now, that being said, we're talking about, at the end of the day, two cycles that have been kind of underwhelming, to say the least. And I'd also say there were a lot of consumers that we think have held off on buying kind of that next generation iPhone device, upgrading that phone, essentially waiting for the 5G capability. Because if you think about it, most consumers these days are holding on to that device for at least 3 to 4 years now. So that being said, we think this cycle is going to be important in the fact that there are going to be a lot less people kind of buying these devices secondhand, and now actually going directly to to buy these these new phones with the 5G capability, because they'll need it over the next 3 to 4 years, even though you don't have 5G in your actual location at this moment in time.
So, Angelo, did the probability of someone having 5G in their location change today? Because I saw the simultaneous Verizon headline, but that even still, I still don't really get that either, to be honest, which is, I know there's different versions of the 5G, the very highest speed one, which has been very limited in terms of availability. Is this going to be a noticeably expanded, faster network, though, for Verizon users? Is that going to mean that Apple through Verizon should get more? Does that have more of a value proposition now on Verizon if you're an Apple user?
Yeah, I mean, listen, when we looked at the actual, it was pretty incredible how often Apple, plugged in Verizon at this event. And that being said, I mean, if you kind of look at the networks that are out there in the U.S., Verizon definitely boosts the best 5G network out there. So it makes sense to have kind of the CEO of Verizon at this event to kind of plug Verizon with their millimeter wave capabilities, which is significantly faster than what's called sub-6 gigahertz capabilities on the 5G side of things. So there are different types of technology. If you've got the Apple 5G device and you have that capability in your region, you're going to get significantly faster significantly faster speeds and lower latency relative to what you're seeing with 4G.
Okay, Angelo. Lastly, of course, from your perspective, does this change your outlook for the company? Does it meaningfully shift what you calculate for the bottom line?
So, entering kind of the event here, our view, at least on the iPhone side of things, is we were looking for about a 2-year kind of very nice upgrade cycle on the iPhone side of things. We're looking for about 15% revenue growth in the year ahead for iPhones. That's going to be driven by about 9% growth on the unit side of things and about 6% growth on the actual average selling prices in terms of the fact that people are just going to gravitate towards the better, more recent phones that have been launched, given that there are no 5G phones out there. So from that perspective, I mean, we continue to just, maintain our outlook on that side of things. But we also think that that's a very conservative outlook, and we actually think the estimates out there have some modest upside potential here over the next year. So from that perspective, I think there's a lot to be excited about relative to the expectations out there. But longer term, our view is this continues to be a company that's transitioning their business towards services and greater healthcare fitness capabilities, and that's going to be the key story. And investors really can't keep their eye off on how the performance of those businesses are going to do here in the next couple of quarters, because what we do expect will happen is we do think that you're going to see some multiple compression as you see the outperformance on the hardware side of things. And I think the only way they keep that, that the actual multiple sustained is if you continue to see the outperformance on the services side of things, and that remains to be seen.
Angelo, just real quick, after Disney's announcement yesterday of their restructuring focusing on content, would something like that make sense for Apple on a smaller scale to highlight a more specific kind of separation of hardware and service?
Well, unfortunately, Apple actually doesn't have the content that clearly Disney and others out there have. So the key really we think for Apple's side of things will eventually be to come out with more of an as-a-service hardware offering, in conjunction with some of the stuff they announced last month in terms of their bundling strategy. And we do think that gets announced here over the next kind of 18 to 24 months. Probably not something you'll see over the next quarter or two, though.